I'm John Matthews and I'm the Managing Director of Fitwise Management Ltd. What I want to do is talk a little bit about revenue generation, particularly about recruiting members and also, as importantly, retention of membership. It's something that I call the leaky bucket. You pour members in the top and all the time members are leaking out to the bottom, and it's about how do you close up the leaks, how do you maximize what's going in the top, how do you fill up that bucket with new members, because it is a continual process. And I'm sure you all have your experiences of managing membership, of finding ways, of ideas about how to recruit. And what I want to talk you through is really what I have, it's a synopsis of a few plans that I presented to different associations, and it's just some ideas that you might find useful, hopefully. And one of the first things you have to do is to actually work out why you'd want to recruit new members. And it seems fairly obvious. I mean, the first thing is that you get an increase in membership income. But the more members you have, it also allows you to generate more income from your other methods of raising income. So that's through advertising. If you can double your membership, there's no reason why you can't put your advertising rates up because you're getting better coverage. You can also, and the same for sponsorship and for exhibition revenues. You've got a bigger core of membership that your exhibitors and sponsors can talk to. You will obviously get a knock-on effect of higher attendance at events. And every organization likes to have a growing membership. It gives you a stronger voice out there. And the more you can represent your own area of specialism, then the better. There are certain things you should do before you start a recruitment campaign, and they may feel fairly straightforward, but I think it's about getting the package right before you even make a start. So look critically at what offering you have. Is your website up to date is the first thing that people look at. So if you're doing a membership campaign, make sure your website is as good as you can get it, and make sure it's as easy as possible for members to join. If you have a direct debit scheme, make sure that's working properly. If you haven't got one, it's not too difficult to get hold of one. It's difficult to do it yourself, but you can find agencies who will do direct debit processing on your behalf. Also look at some organizations you can only join the 1st of April. That makes a real problem for the rest of the year from the way I see it. It means, okay, in November you can offer them 6 months free, but it does give you a problem, and it's something that I think it's worth changing your memorandums and articles if it's written in there as to when you join. So there are certain things you might have to do to change the time of the year that people can join. It's also worth looking at if you have a competing society. So there may be, I say competing, it could be a sister organization. I don't know what you want to call it, but there may be someone else in the same field as you, and just look again at what they are offering and just making sure that your packages match up to theirs so that you can not necessarily pinch their members, but make sure that new members join you rather than join them. I've had to stand up and justify to a board whether there's an opportunity there in the first place. It's about saying, is an opportunity, and if there is an opportunity, how much money are you going to invest in getting to it? So we've done things like, we've done a freedom of information request for to ask how many of a certain category of nurse is working in the health service. And we got a 95% response to that, which was extraordinary, better than I'd ever expected, but they are legally obliged to respond to that. So you may want to, if you're working in the health service or in any public sector, an FOI request can generate a good deal of useful information. And from that, you can ask how many people are working in these places. You know your own members, and from that you can deduce how many aren't members. And we did it for one organization, and it worked out that they had about 50% of the marketplace, so there's a good 50% to go for. If you can't do an FOI request, or there's one that you can't phrase easily, then another way of doing it is to pick from your mailing list. Maybe you have heads of department or the senior person within a department, and to either mail all of them or pick a sample of 20% of them, and again work out. You can ask them very simply in your department how many people are members of this society from these categories of staff, and you can work out from that, and you can extrapolate it for the UK. You can do a similar thing with just taking a random sample of 25% of members and asking them if they have colleagues who aren't members. So again, it's about using your existing membership. You may be able to get mailing lists, and if you can, that's worth looking at a mailing list. And from a mailing list, you can compare. It takes a bit of time to deduplicate the two, but you can see you buy a membership, a mailing list of 1,000, you can compare, take off the 500 members you've got, and you've got 500 left. So that's, but again, you'd have to pay for that. So that's involves a bit of money in getting a mailing list in the first place. But what you have to do is to establish that there's sufficient business out there for you to go start a recruitment campaign. If you've got 95% of the market, if your members are required to join your organization to do the profession that they're in, then you have to think about things more differently, I think, probably. Having established it, assuming that you can establish as a business case, the important thing is to work out how much you can invest in membership recruitment so that it brings you some sort of return. Now, ignore the numbers here, they're just set as an example, but I've used some straightforward numbers just for the sake of ease of mathematics. So I'm assuming that a member, I'm not talking about different categories of member, just keep it very simple. It costs £100 to join this organization as a member. So that's the variable number one. Variable number two is you've got to work out the marginal cost of supplying your member. Now, marginal cost is the cost of actually physically what you send them, what you do for them every year. So if you send them a journal and a newsletter and you do bits and pieces, these are measurable things that you can work out how much extra it'll cost for you to send out as and when a new member joins. Always in the first year, it's a bit more expensive because there's admin costs involved in joining up a new member. If they're on direct debit, rejoining them is pretty straightforward. So I've said in this case, it costs £60 in the first year for someone to join, and it costs £50 every other year. So that's the sort of cost. Again, you'll have different figures, but I'm just trying to get the principle across here. Something that's very useful to do, and I find that this is to me is the deal breaker, is finding out how long your members stay in the organization. Because you can look at it and say, okay, a new member brings £100 a year, but we only make £40 out of that, so we can only spend £40. But generally, you'll find that people stay between 5 and 7 years. I've done this for 3 separate organizations, 1 medical and 2 nursing ones, and typically 5 to 7 years is the length that they will stay with it. And it's something you can do by looking back through your records, taking the average length of time your current members are there. You've got to do some working out, but it makes quite a difference to the numbers, because if they're costing between £60 and £50 a year, and you're getting £100 a year from them, it means in this example they will contribute £290 to the organisation. So that's taking all the costs, stripping all that out of it. Now, say you set a target of increasing by 10%, so I'm assuming we've got 1,000 members, so we're going to get 100 new members out of this. If you get 100 new members from the previous work we've just done, that's bringing in £29,000 worth of additional membership income. Now, that's a significant amount of money. And what you might want to say is, okay, you ask the board, whoever you're talking to, whoever gives you permission, to say, okay, what we need is half of that to spend on this publicity campaign that we want to run. So, and I don't know how your organization works, but you can show a cost benefit of that, assuming that you can bring on board, you can achieve your target of 10%. They might say that's a bit ambitious, so 5%, okay, you have to halve that budget. How do you go about it? Now, there's all sorts of, and there's numerous ways of recruiting, and I'm happy to talk to you about it later. I don't have time to go into every sort of membership campaign, but member get member is a very popular form of doing it, and it's about incentivizing the members to bring in their colleagues, and there's nice subtle ways you can do it. You can buy mailing lists. You can advertise if you do a newsletter or a journal, advertise for membership there. And people say, well, why do you advertise to your existing membership? 2 very good reasons. One is they have colleagues who they might be speaking to. And the other is, and Volvo is a classic example of this, the majority of people who read Volvo adverts are people who drive Volvos. So here you're reinforcing the reason for them joining the organization in the first place. So it's stopping the leaks out the bucket. So advertising is useful. A, it reminds your members why they joined in the first place, and B, in marketing it's called alleviating post-purchase dissonance. That means when you buy something and you think, oh, have I made the right decision? And then you go back and think, I shouldn't have bought these shoes. If you see an advert for them, you think, actually, yeah, I've made the right decision. So it's about advertising has got 2 uses. Emailing, mailing lists, purchasing lists, as I've talked about already. You must have lapsed members, people who've joined, who have left the organization. It's always worth going back to them. A very simple thing that we did, and we do it quite often, but we did it for an event in November. We had on the event website, if you aren't a member of the organization and you'd like to know more about us, put your name in here. We ended up with 250 new email addresses of people who said they were interested. You can say, sign up to be a friend of, and people type their information in there. So it's their name, and all you want is their name and email address. Once you've got that, they're on your list of potential contacts. And go back through events that you run in the last 12 months, last 24 months, and you've got a mailing list of people there who aren't members. So before you know it, you can get a lot of additional information. Help from companies. We've done work with companies in the past who have expressed an interest in getting involved, and they can just, for them it's a bit of an icebreaker. They can go in to see their customer and say, oh, by the way, we're helping out the urological nurses, and we're handing out application forms for them. So if you're interested in being a member, here's the information. So and that gives them a bit of an icebreaker, and will give them perhaps entry somewhere, and gives them something else to talk about rather than talking about their products all the time. And then add an incentive. So make sure that you are incentivizing either the companies. I mean, you could have an incentive for the sales force in a company, and that's one of our organizations is doing that. They're having a little competition amongst their sales team to see how many members they can raise for one of the organizations that we're working for. The important thing is to measure and communicate. So keep the whole thing live. When you launch the campaign and you're doing a membership recruitment using your members, keep going at them, keep reminding them what you're doing, what you're hoping they'll achieve, keep them up to date, pick out the people who've recruited 2 or 3 new members, make a big thing about them, put it on their website. Generally keep the momentum going. Keep it simple. Now, a lot of organizations just now are facing a declining membership, and it's always hard to look at, you can look at the numbers declining year on year, but at the same time, keep a focus on how many new members you're getting. And what you'll find is maybe overall you stayed flat, but in fact, if you hadn't done your recruitment campaign, you would have been showing a decline. So keep a close eye on both who's leaving and who's staying. Follow up the people who've left, keep asking them why they've left, and making sure it's something that's not lacking from your offering. When that helps you measure your retention rates. Set an end date so that you know when it's all going to come to an end, and you can get the pressure on. You can do an email out saying you've got 4 weeks left for this campaign, then it closes, and then you probably have your winners, existing members, but you should have on board, you should have 5–10%, hopefully you'd hit your target. It's a difficult area at times to work, but there are all sorts of ways of doing it and all sorts of things that you can do to help bring people on board, and I would urge you to do it. And this maybe give you a little bit of a template as to how you can adapt this to suit your own particular needs. These slides will be available, as will all the slides after the event. So the examples will be there, and you just need to change the numbers and fit your own examples in. So thank you for that quick whiz through membership recruitment. I don't know if anybody has any questions to ask. In that case, I will quickly swap over microphone and pass you over to my colleague, Paul.
Thanks, John. It's Paul myself. It's interesting, isn't it? I think a lot of us, whether we're in healthcare organisations where we're having members who are paying the time out, or whether or not we've got general public who's becoming part of our organisation. Getting out there, getting our message out there to more and more people is a priority for all of us, isn't it? So thank you, John, for that. So,
It's just the space bar. Back to the first page. Okay, thanks very much, Philippa. I'm going to talk a little bit. My name's Paul Harris, and I'm the head of sales and marketing at Fitwise Management. I'm going to talk a little bit about revenue generation for healthcare associations. Firstly, I think what we need to do is look at the landscape. What's happening out there in terms of sponsorship, revenues, what's actually going on out there. One of the first things I think that's quite obvious is that currently the medical device and pharmaceutical sector is challenged in terms of marketing budgets. Increasingly they're coming under pressure, ultimately to just product and marketing managers are increasingly coming under pressure to justify their spending decisions. Ultimately it comes down to return on investment. They need to ultimately focus on what's the bottom line and what return that gives them. Also, as John already alluded to, many associations are seeing their delegate numbers dropping off for attending conferences. Now, this has obviously the effect that it makes it less desirable for companies to come sometimes to your events. So again, there has to be compelling reasons for them to be involved. Mentioned already, focus for industry participations moved away from, at one time or other, healthcare associations would be supported by industry as much out of goodwill. It was by way of a thank you to the members and to ultimately their clients. But increasingly that's been value driven. It's about a return on investment, as mentioned already. They're looking for something in return. They can no longer just participate in events because it's a nice thing to do, essentially. I think the key thing that isn't all doom and gloom, and we should really reiterate that, and that is that large sponsorship spend still exists. I still see them out there on a regular basis. However, their occurrence depends more than ever on relevance. It has to be relevant. One of the things we're going to look at, 5 tips for growing exhibition income. I would say that growing exhibition income is about keeping it clear and keeping it simple. You'll all have events, whether it be study days, exhibitions, and really it's about keeping it clear and simple. Firstly, ensure your database is up to date. Deleting old contacts will not generate new income, but it will certainly cleanse your data. But more importantly, adding new prospects. You may think you've got a very loyal customer base for your exhibition and for your events, but ultimately things change. You have to be aware of that and you have to recognize that. So you should always be looking to add new contacts because you can never essentially have enough. Competitor events. I frequently attend competitor events. John mentioned already there are competing societies, there are other events out there that are run by other organisations. Face-to-face contact is invaluable. The opportunity to meet people who are currently exhibiting in another event who are also spending money. They have budgets to spend. Selling up. What does that mean? Well, often companies like to increase their footprint at an exhibition. If you limit them to what they can achieve in terms of the stand space and what they can do, then obviously they can only spend it within the parameters set. Offer them more space. I mean, it seems very simplistic, but it works. We've just taken on an event which has been run in Manchester this year, and we increased the footprint for exhibitions probably by 10 to 20%, and invariably all the large sponsors are taking a larger exhibition space. Pricing. If your event's been going well, factor in above inflation price increases. I mean, if the market allows and sponsors and exhibitors are coming forward on a regular basis, then factor in above whatever, 3 to 4% currently inflation, factor larger increases than that. If your event's not going well, obviously use common sense and think, well, actually we probably should retain the prices as they currently are. Packages. We mentioned return on investment being key. So try and offer things, I'm a great believer in not discounting the prices of your stands or your exhibition because ultimately you're just eroding margin and revenues for your association. But it is possible to add value, give them something in return without actually costing anything to your society or to your association. Talked about growing exhibition income. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about sponsorship income. Not that dissimilar. Much of what I've said already will still apply. But there are some things that we should be aware of. Key, understanding budgets. What budgets have been assigned to your given event, if any? Have that candid and frank discussion with the companies or the main sponsors for your event. Find out what kind of budgets are there. It will frame the discussions and it will make life easier from your point of view to see what's the maximum you can achieve from that client or from that event. Product. Understanding how topical the agenda, how relevant the agenda is key. Companies, again, we mentioned already, are increasingly having to justify why they're at an event. Give them you're not giving them a reason to attend, but ultimately explain to them why they should be attending. Is their product covered in a generic capacity on the programme? Why is it relevant for them? Or of course, if they've got new products which are being launched, again, understand that when they are launching new products, they have to be spending money to promote and develop a profile for this product or service. Competition. It never fails to amaze me what companies will do if they think their competition is at an event. They'll spend more money if they think their competitors are there. They'll try to increase the size of their stands. They'll try to upgrade their sponsorship packages just pure and simply because they don't want to be outdone by their competition. Again, that's probably to a lesser extent now than it was maybe 5-6 years ago, but it still exists. I would say maybe not vanity, but it certainly is, the fact that they don't want to be outdone by their competition. It's something to be aware of. Innovation, obviously offering new sponsorship opportunities. Many people are interested in many social media linked sponsorship opportunities. I think there's some way to go within the healthcare association market for those types of opportunities. The other thing as well is if you're attending competitor events, try and extract some of the things that are good from those events. Often they're doing excellent sponsorships and they're developing something that you're not currently offering your sponsors. Look at what's being done. Don't reinvent the wheel. use their knowledge and their expertise. Benefits. Clearly articulate the benefits to the clients. Put yourself in their shoes. Try and understand what it is, why they would want to spend the money, and what they will get from spending that money, what they're ultimately getting in return. And testimonials are key as well. Testimonials from your sponsors from previous years will definitely help them to make that purchasing decision. Other areas that could be looked at for revenue generation. Obviously, we work with a number of healthcare associations, many of which have different compositions in terms of how they generate revenue. Corporate membership. Now, many of you might be aware of corporate memberships within your own organisations, but interestingly enough, I spoke to one large organisation last week who don't have a corporate membership scheme. Now, for associations without such a scheme, it's very easy to initiate and generally low cost to service this. This is almost by way of thanks from industry. They can sign up to corporate membership, can generate significant sums of revenue for your association and at fairly low cost for your organisation. I'm sure you all have journals, newsletters, websites. Key thing is offering flexibility here. If you can offer both print and online options for advertising and promoting of their services and products. Guidelines. I see a lot of interest in, particularly obviously clinical guidelines. Companies are keen to sponsor those. And as we see a tightening of the market, particularly for pharmaceutical industries, this is something that they're very keen to sponsor. If there's guidelines which come out, companies are generally, if their product is in some way generically either enshrined within that or in some way associated with that, then they're obviously interested. Another thing which we've initiated over the last few years is meeting sponsorship. Again, companies are quite often happy to cover the costs associated with holding the regular board meetings. It could be they're prepared to pay for lunch. It could be that they're prepared to pay for a half-hour, 20-minute session within that meeting in order for you to fund the costs of your board, executive council meeting, whatever you call it. Another thing which obviously can generate income is award sponsorship. It's an opportunity for companies to utilise their branding, and also they can be involved in promoting it to the applicants, the awards. So it engages both the commercial companies, but also it engages the members as well. Where are there opportunities to add value? Pricing flexibility. We mentioned pricing already. Avoid setting a price per square metre. Now I come across a number of events where people set a price per square metre. That you're then beholden to that price. There is no room for negotiation. There also isn't any scope to develop the margins there. What you'll find is that companies are willing to pay for stands which are in a premium position. If it's shelf scheme, if it's open on more than 2 sides, if it's open on 3 sides, again, they'll pay more money for this. This is something that gets them more visibility, and obviously it makes it more appealing to potential exhibitors. So try and retain that pricing flexibility. Maximising space, again, if you can add more square meterage to a venue that you're currently using for an event, ultimately that can mean more revenue. We've recently adopted online floor plans, hosted online floor plans, which, again, generally low cost, £500 to £600 for an organisation, but a fairly high impact option. It looks professional. What it also allows your sponsors to go online to look and see if their competitors are already at the event. It could be that floor plan's already selling the event for you without you even speaking to them. So a useful tool as well. Another thing which, in terms of adding value, not necessarily of monetary value, is to look at commercial advice, sharing your knowledge or understanding of both the Bribery Act, which came into force in 2010, and of course things like the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industries, ABPI, or in case of the medical device, the Association of Healthcare Industries, Code of Practice. Particularly with the likes of ABPI, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies are coming under restrictions as to what they can sponsor. So if you can share your knowledge with them and explain to them that you know that these given sponsorships would ultimately fit with the requirements of ABPI or any other regulatory body, then obviously it makes your life easier and indeed theirs. And this is something we'll see more of as time evolves with the advent of the Bribery Act and of course the ABPI's further restrictions. We always do an exhibitor survey. This provides invaluable feedback. Quite often they'll give you an insight into what they're looking for, the types of options, sponsorship or exhibitor options they're looking for. Use them. Don't just do it as a kind of lip service exercise. Try and glean the feedback and then utilise that going forward. Often some of the best sponsorships we've developed have then appeared the following year as a result of feedback from exhibitor surveys. I'm sure most of you offer delegate lists, and probably electronically, post-event, whether it be for a study day or an exhibition. Key thing is, if you can, provide email addresses. Most of the events I attend, I do get a delegate list, but often I won't get email addresses. We came up against this a number of years ago. Obviously, data protection, you can't provide email addresses without explicit consent. You can, of course, when people sign up or register for an event, you can ask them for permission. And we find now that we get 50 to 60% of our registered delegates giving permission. This is invaluable for sponsors and for industry. Makes their life a lot easier. So in summary, what kind of things can we look at? Research. Regular analysis of trade advertising, both web, publication-based, and other events will indicate a company's spend. You can see the trends if companies have money to spend, whether it be to do new products or simply because they're trying to really develop the market. Utilize that to then think, well, obviously they have money available potentially for my given event as well. Ensure your product or proposition, ensure your product's fit for purpose. It may be that you think that your sponsorship opportunities and exhibiting opportunities are fantastic. And it could be that you've been told that in the past, but it's always worthwhile just ensuring that from the feedback from your exhibitors and sponsors that it is fit for purpose. Your experience, utilizing case studies, testimonials, they remain powerful selling tools to your industry sponsors. Show them, give them proof basically from, or credence from your sponsors, other sponsors, that it's worthwhile them being involved. Know facts and figures, know what it is you're offering, how it's going to help them, and what type of return on investment they can expect. So it could be how many leads can they generate from your given exhibition or event, and what kind of revenue they can anticipate generating from that. You could give case studies for that type of thing. Finally, finance. We've mentioned budgets. Understand your sponsors' budgets. How much is available out there? What is available in terms of a budget? When does their financial year run? If you can understand that, the parameters of that, you can go to them at the right time of year. You can ask them when their financial year runs and then go to them with a package of options early doors, because if you don't, somebody else will get in and probably secure that spend before you. The other thing to look at, terms of payment. Again, as the market tightens, and particularly within the healthcare sector, probably coming under pressure from NHS, they're being squeezed, the industry suppliers, so as a result they're feeling the pinch in some cases. If your association has the flexibility in terms of payment, then try to utilise this to secure more business, and it's something that they definitely would appreciate. Thank you.